Greetings, greetings. Welcome to Ep7 of Black Women Are Dope AF, a storytelling series that I created to amplify the brilliance, the power, and the resilience of Black women. My name is Barbara Ohuninifa, and my hope is with this series that we're able to reclaim our ancestral mother's wisdom so that Black women can feel seen, supported, and reminded of our inherent strength and capacity for self love and leadership. Plus, this will serve as a long term archive of Black women's contributions to humanity and to culture and to society, challenging this erasure that we see happening throughout the government in the United States today. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't want to miss the next episode or any other content that we post here and share through this series or other series. But in this episode, I'm going to share with you, and we're honoring the story of, and let me slow down so I can put some respect on her name, Alimotu Pelewura. She is the Nigerian market woman whose queen pin energy said not MFing today to the British colonizers and some of the nationalist men in Nigeria as well. I'm going to share her story, tell you why I think she's dope, and stick around to the end because that's where I'll share some of the wisdom she left behind for us as Black women and how we can apply that as medicine to our lives today. So let's get into it. You will see me looking at my notes because listen, this is where we at. This is where I'm at. We've been through a lot of things. I don't have things memorized, but we're gonna get into it. And I want to be precise about it. So again, her story, I'm gonna slow down every time I say her name. Alimutu Pelewura. And I'm sure with the Yoruba accent, it is much different. It sounds much more elegant when Nigerian people say it, but I'm rolling with it and giving her honor by saying her name and telling her story. She was born in Lagos in the late 19th century into a Yoruba trading family, and she rose through the ranks to become a leader of thousands of market women. Now, she belonged to a lineage of Yoruba market traders, women who worked the market, who sold their goods, their wares at the market. And there's a historical context for that as well. And these women, these market women in Nigeria, were the economic powerhouses of pre colonial Nigeria. Now, obviously, when the British came in, they came in with their patriarchal, sexist ideas that were already somewhat starting to brew and it just amplified. But market women had cultural authority and political influence historically in Nigeria, and they managed entire trade networks through a system of accountability and respect. Black women knew how to do business and still do. We do it in a way that is very different than what we see the colonizers doing, what we see corporations and capitalism doing, but we still got that money. Aje, money, currency moved with women in charge of it because that's what we do. And she worked in a fish market, and her leadership and her speaking skills earned her the title of Ialoja, which was mother of the market in Lagos. Now, that term Ialoja, it may sound familiar and similar to some other titles that are given through initiation in Ifa or in Yoruba spiritual traditions, but this is not exactly that. She has some of the similar power in terms of culture, but it wasn't something that she went through an initiation. She wasn't a priestess. She wasn't standing in a spiritual capacity. This was something given to truly the leader of the market, the woman who led the marketplace, which were women. And she went on and she founded the Lagos Market Women's Association, which was a powerful grassroots organization, well, a political movement, really. It was a union and a political movement. They organized, they protested, and they negotiated with colonial officials. They opposed the 1938 price control laws. And these laws allowed the British authorities to dictate market prices and criminalize women for protecting their livelihoods. Now, think about this. These people came into this country, was not their country, colonized it, and said, we're going to dictate to you how you're going to sell, how your economy is going to work, and we're going to tell you how much you can charge, and you're going to pay us in the meantime. These women were like, oh, no, not today. This is what they have been doing for generations. Their economic sovereignty has been something that had been managed by the market women for generations. And they said, no, no. And so again, 1938 price controls, and think about what was going on in the United States at the time. Jim Crow, more control, more colonization, oppression, all the things. Now, I'm gonna say her name. I gotta say her name. Alimotu Pelewura. She led mass mobilizations, marches, petitions, economic shutdowns. She said, "Oh, y'all want to try to dictate how we do things? How about we shut it all down?" She knew, and as Black women do, how to manage the situation. She demanded fair treatment and sovereignty for African traders. Like, we've been doing this. Y'all can't come in and tell us. So she challenged colonial rule in a way that was very different than what the British were accustomed to. Because again, they have been oppressing their women. And that coming into Nigeria, into the continent of Africa, and seeing the power that women had, they said, "Oh my goodness, what is this? This is uncivilized." And I'll speak about it in a moment. A lot of the Nigerian men went along with that. And and so they being the British officials targeted the market women as disruptive and uncivilized, but she flipped that. She said, "Oh no." So let me give you a little bit of context about market women in Yoruba society. They were the political drivers, they were the economic drivers. They managed the trade system, especially in food and textile and domestic goods. They maintained economic independence and formed collective savings associations. Understand when I say that these women managed the flow of money, currency, economic sovereignty in their communities. It moved and it flowed because women were managing it in a way that uplifted the community, in a way that was based on good character and principles. Because if you think about it, women wanted to make sure that their families were going to be taken care of, and their families extended to the community. So it was in everyone's best interest for money to circulate and to be done honestly and justly and fairly. And that's how they had been managing it. And women held leadership positions like Iyalode and Iyaloja, which gave them access to the king's court and influence in policy making and community management. They played central roles in this anti-colonial resistance, like strikes and the price protests and tax revolts. And their organizing style was non-institutional. It was grassroots. It was matriarchal. It was what women do. We talk to each other, and each other talks to each other, and we form groups and coalitions in that way, not some authoritarian structured way that is really what was impressed upon us, and that's what was in the process of being impressed upon us when they fought back. Now, giving you that context, so she held Alimuta, held Mama Alamuta, held meetings with the colonial governor, and she resisted police harassment and publicly denounced these discriminatory ordinances. I mean, think of it as red. All of the things that we experience here and now are resurging here today. She organized, the women came together to protect themselves and their families. They understood what was at stake. They understood the assignment, and they understood their inherent power that was systematically being or being challenged or taken away from them, and they stood against it. Even when Nigerian nationalists hesitated to center women, she called them out too and demanded gender inclusion in these political conversations. And so Nigerian men were sidelining the women too, their Nigerian women. So during early nationalist movements in the 1920s to 1940s, elite Nigerian men who were lawyers or journalists or political leaders formed political parties and excluded women's leadership. Now, if you've been following my this series or the ancestral activation series back in February in 2025, you will hear and you will have learned that the only time we get traction, the only time we are able to achieve some incremental liberation is when women and men work together. Whenever women have been sidelined or silenced or oppressed, there's only so far that the men can get on their own, because that is not the way it's meant to be. It's meant to be in partnership, period, dot. And they were doing the same thing, excluding women's leadership, and downplayed the women's market power as informal and non-modern. Well, all that meant is that it wasn't like the colonizers were doing it. It wasn't like these British men who were coming and talking all of this in their ear about how things were so much different and they had control over their women and all the things. But what these men were realizing is that they had what they had. They were achieved what they had achieved because of the centuries of women, Black women, Nigerian women, managing the marketplace and the economy so everyone thrived. They forgot that and then wanted to be like they were seeing the colonizers come in instead of seeing them as a threat. They saw them only to an extent as a threat, but still sidelined the women. And they focused on male centered constitutional reforms and access to colonial political power. Exactly that. They wanted what they saw them white men had, and sidelined their own women, their own traditions, their own economic pathways to try to achieve that. And this is, no shade on Nigeria, no shade on Nigerian men, past, present, and future, but this is just the facts of what happened. And unless we understand what happened and how, we're doomed to repeat it, kind of like we see happening. But hopefully things are getting so to the point where we can't ignore it anymore and we have to look at these things. Now, Pelewura's, Mama Alimutu's Pelewura's style of organizing was very community based. It was grassroots. As I said, it's women talking to each other, sharing information, and ensuring that the information and was shared and that they were aligned and they were marching to the same drum, because they all wanted the same things. They wanted to protect their economic systems. They wanted to protect their livelihood. This came down to protecting their families because they knew they needed resources in order to do that. And so that's what they focused on. And the elite males, the elite men, often looked at that as women-led resistance as embarrassing or uncivilized or non-strategic. These are almost the exact same words and point of view used during the civil rights movement in the United States. For example, why Fannie Lou Hamer was not included or elevated the way she should have been, because the very elite civil rights leaders said she didn't speak as eloquently and women shouldn't be in that position and she was too rural and too grassroots. Same thing happened here in a different time period under the same circumstances. But she challenged them. Mama Alimutu challenged them as well. Now, her story matters to us because she built one of the earliest forms of gendered African anti colonial resistance, and it was powered by the economic and cultural force of Black women. And again, if you've been following this series, Black Women Are Dope AF, and you've been following the Ancestral Activation series, our liberation, Black liberation, which is a requirement as a path to collective liberation, our liberation is dependent on economics, political, educational, and psychological liberation. It has to be all of those. And this group, this woman, and the work that she did looked at the culture and the economic forces of Black women in our communities and sought to protect that. And she laid the groundwork for the next woman we're going to talk about, Fomilayo Ransom Kuti, and the Abiakote women's protest. We'll talk more about that. That's a whole other episode, actually, our next episode. But Mama Alimutu's work laid the groundwork for those Abiyakuta protests. And her legacy proves to us that Black women's organizing power does not come from institutions, does not come from these structures that we see falling apart, these structures that have not been able to stave off what we see happening in the world today in 2025. Black women's political and organizing power comes from something that's innate, that is within us, something that is ancestral, and something that only we can understand and activate. Others can participate, others partner in that. But what's been missing overall is what is uniquely us in that. It's not to say that we don't need the structure. Absolutely, we do. We need the structure. Robert F. Williams, again from the Ancestral Activation series, let us know an aspect of that because he brought that self defense structure that we needed. Um, A.G. Gaston brought economic structure. I mean, there are lots of examples of when we need that masculine energy, but what's been missing and been sidelined is the feminine energy and our unique way of doing things. And when I say feminine energy, I'm talking about energy. We're not talking about the gender and how, even our ability to look at the spectrum of gender and just look at things in a binary way. We're not even talking about that because if you could be a deeply, I'm getting off topic here, but you could be presenting or assigned male at birth, but have a deep feminine energy where you still understand this concept. So understand when I say women and femmes and this feminine energy, I'm talking about it from the root energy, but with the reality that Black women, descendant from enslaved Africans, descendant from colonized Africans, descendant from the first woman on this planet that gave birth to all of humanity, that's the energy I'm talking about. And she being that divine feminine energy, can show up wherever the fuck she wants to. That's why she's dope as fuck. So let's move on now that I've gone off on a tangent. Why she is dope, why she is on this list, why we even talking about her, that queen pen energy. So she built, reason number one, she built one of the most powerful Black women's grassroots organization in colonial West Africa. That union, that political force, that Lego Women's Marketplace Women's Association had thousands of members and it spanned ethnicities, regions, and it operated with a deep sense of mutual accountability. This was a sisterhood, and they didn't play. And when I say and we say ethnicities, we have to think about this concept of race, black. That's something that was formed later, that was formed and created, a construct created to create racism. When we talk about ethnicities, everybody is black, but you come from different tribes, different lineages, that are the different ethnicities. So uh, that organization spanned across all these different ethnicities, even though they had their own traditions. They came together to understand what was at stake. They came together to fight together for what was at stake. And again, that mutual accountability, nobody was trying to get over on anybody. They understood, again, each other weren't the enemies. There was someone else that was trying to come for them. And it was one of the first political formations in Lagos to mobilize around class, gender, and cultural identity at the same time. Again, that fluidity, that ability to think out the box, that ability to think in this non-linear way and to act in a non-linear way is what made Mama Alimutu so powerful and the work that she did so powerful. And one of the reasons why she is dope as fuck. Now, next reason is she stood up to colonial officials, those British colonial officials, the Gubda, and she won concessions through direct confrontation and fearless negotiations. They didn't want to acknowledge her power, but they had to. They had to come to the table. They had to have a conversation because she had the local power. She had the women who owned the marketplace. And when you own the marketplace, when you own the economic keys, that is a level of power that demands a conversation. She led delegations of women to the governor's office and publicly rejected the discriminatory taxes and refused to accept colonial control of Black women's trade, how they made their money, how much they could charge for things, and then having to pay the British government a tax on what they did make, or having to pay, later on, we'll talk about in the next episode, having to pay fees to be able to have a stall where they had had stalls for generations. All these things brought in by the British that many of the Nigerian men at the time kind of went along with, but the women said, no, no. And of course, she was arrested multiple times. They tried to deter her. I'm sure that they did even worse than arrested her, but she didn't back down. She knew the assignment. And like many of the resistors and the freedom fighters and the sacred shields that we talked about during the ancestral activation, she operated from a place of love, love of herself, her family, her community, their traditions that had stood for generations. She understood her assignment was divine, that what was happening was not right and she had to do something. And all of the other thousands of women that joined her in that process understood the assignment as well, much like the 92% here in the United States. I'm just saying. Another reason, third reason, she is dope as fuck is because she made market woman a title of political authority, not insult, the way the British tried to. They tried to dismiss the market women as something uncivilized, uncouth, and not worthy of their time. And many of the Nigerian men who were in the elite class started to look at them in that same way and kind of went along with the colonial influence and colonial point of view. When the British attempted to paint them as illiterate and unruler, she turned that on its head and she reframed the narrative and the truth that market women were the providers. Pause on that for a minute. The market women owned the economic levers in the community, so they were the providers. They were the ones. They fried up the bacon. What is it? Bring home the bacon and fried it up in a pan. You know what I'm saying? I'm showing my age. Many of y'all don't even know about that commercial. But she framed market women as providers, organizers, strategists, and elders, not victims or some crazy women that you're just going to dismiss and ignore and keep it moving. She said again, not today. And then the last reason, I mean, there are many reasons, but we're not trying to make this an indefinite video or podcast, whichever one form you're listening to. She demanded gender equality again from both colonial rulers and nationalist men. Let's just call them what they are. She demanded it from the colonizers and the wannabes. She refused to let Nigerian male elites sideline the women's voices in the struggle for independence. She knew, and like we all know, if they failed, it was going to infect all of us. So why exclude us when we have value to offer? But in order to do that, and I'm getting slightly ahead of myself, in order to stand for that, in order to fight for that, as a woman, as a Black woman, she had to understand her power. She had to understand her gifts and that what she had to contribute was of value, and without it, the efforts would be missing it sorely. She had to have that clarity and understanding. And I say she because she led, Mama Alimutu led these women, but there were thousands of women who were of that same mindset, different ethnicities, different classes, different groups. They understood that their leadership had to be a part of the conversation and they fought for it. And her advocacy for women's leadership in public life pushed the nationalist politics towards more inclusive agendas. Now, we can argue if that continued, if there was some backlash, because that was the early 1900s. So a lot have happened since then. And, it's been 100 years, or a lot has happened. And a lot continues to happen. But she did the thing and left this legacy for us to look at. Now, let me just take a pause for a cause before we go on to talk about her wisdom and how we can apply that today, even though it was 100 years ago, and lots of things have gone down since then, and potentially lost some traction both in Nigeria and globally. There's still wisdom that we can tap into and understand how to apply it in our lives today as Black women. Before we go on, though, if you're liking this content, if you're feeling this inspiration of knowing and remembering how dope you are as a Black woman, based on and because of the evidence of the dope Black women in history, our ancestral mothers that have been obscured from us, if you're digging this content, like, subscribe, comment so we can get a conversation going and learn from each other, and share it with a sister who needs to remember who the fuck she is, who needs to remember where she comes from and who she comes from, who needs to remember her power. Share this video and any of the other videos so that as Black women, we all can start to remember who we are, because the flame is still there. The wisdom and the knowledge is still there. We just need to activate it because it's been piled on with all of these lies of who we aren't or who colonizers or the patriarchy wants us to be, and not who we truly are and who our ancestral mothers have been. Pause for the cause. Now, the wisdom. First piece of wisdom I see is that economic power is political power, especially when women control it. For all the reasons I just talked about before, women are going to make sure that families, the children are fed, are educated, are clean, are safe, that the elderly have medical attention and care, that families and communities can thrive and future generations can thrive. So, economic power equals political power when women are in charge or control it because we're thinking about the masses. We're thinking about our families and communities, and that is going to be the case. She knew markets were more than commerce, they were spaces of leadership, strategy, and resistance. The marketplaces where things happen, that was the community gathering. It was where money exchanged, information exchanged, knowledge exchanged. People met, community came together, energy was exchanged, controlled. And I say controlled because with quotation marks, because we think of the word control, we think about how we have been controlled, aka colonized in different ways. But control was just like who's managing the flow of things and making sure it has structure and order. In this context, that's what control means. And she turned those stalls, those marketplace stalls, into spaces and stages of protest, places where they met and movement building. So, how can we use that? What's our medicine? What can we do with this idea, this wisdom that economic power is political power when women control it? Today, we can use that to understand that where Black women trade, we also build power. And we can do that by supporting and protecting Black women entrepreneurs as leaders of culture, political, and spiritual economies. It's by Black, but also when you can buy Black women. And the reality is, a lot of small businesses, grassroots organizations, community organizations are led by Black women for the same reasons. We see a need. We see where our families, our children need to be taken care of, and we step in and we get it done. It's not to say Black men or Black families or Black couples don't have businesses. This is about Black women in this case with this wisdom and this medicine. So if you have that idea, you have that concept, you want to start a business, get to it. You got money to spend, find a Black woman or a Black business to spend it with. And this has been echoed again throughout this series and the Ancestral Activation series. And treat these spaces where women gather as sacred. Kitchens, salons, street corners, stores, all of these are sites of organizing. Understand? And build these market strategies for your mission from the ground up. What we see very clearly happening in the world today is that these massive structures built on some of the same things that we've been talking about, the colonizers and dismissing women and all of these other things over the last couple hundred years, several hundred years, 500 years, all of these things are crumbling. They're trying to take things as far as they want to, as far as they can, and it's crumbling because it's meant to crumble. It's not it was never meant to be sustainable. They thought it was, but energetically in the universe, in a divine's eye, things like that sideline, that oppress people, that do harm to humanity are not sustainable. So while that's crumbling, we do what we do and we start from the grassroots up. We start in the community up. We start in our families up. We start in our households up. We do the thing that we do as Black women. That's our medicine. Start where you are and build from there. Next piece of wisdom that I see is that respect, put some respect on my name. Respect is not granted, it is organized. She didn't ask, Mama Alimutu didn't ask for a seat. She brought her own damn table and made them answer to it. Oh, you want to take our money? You want to tell us how we do things? How about we shut it all down? How about I'm a protest? We're going to use our ability to organize because we have the numbers, and we're going to make it so you have to have a conversation with us or get out our business. You have a choice. And she built a culture of bold negotiation and fearless confrontation within a system that was built to silence her. And understand, how unique that is, how groundbreaking that was, especially for then. Even today, people have a problem with an outspoken woman, especially an outspoken black woman. They want to first thing they want to do is say you either angry or you bitter or you masculine because you speak up. Even if it's true, if it's right and all the things, all of these things get projected onto black women who simply use their voice. She gave no fucks and she used her voice. She said, we're going to argue, we're going to strategize, we're going to have some negotiations. And it was inconceivable to the British that they were negotiating with the woman in that way, because that's not how they dealt with their women. That's not what they allowed their women to do. And I'm not getting into European feminist history. It is what it is. That's for somebody else to do. But here they experience something different. And that wisdom that she leaves for us is that respect is not granted, it's organized. And how do we apply that? I'm just sometimes I just get emotional, y'all. How do we organize that? How do we use that? How do we apply that medicine to our lives? Organize your dignity into policy. Don't wait for permission. Organize your people, speak your demands, and name your worth. And let's actually take that a step further by taking it a step back. Know your worth. We have a lot of decolonizing of our minds to do. We have a lot of reclaiming. We have a lot of remembering who the fuck we are to do. My activity book for Black women, it's an activity book and journal, again, created for Black women, and it's titled Remember Who the Fuck You Are. You can find that on my website at shop.beautifulpowerfullove.com or on Amazon. If you're still shopping on Amazon, it's all good. I'm there. Buy Black there too. But this activity book and journal, I created it to help walk us through in a very deep and personal way, remembering who we are, the different aspects of who we are, how to nurture ourselves, how to embrace our sensuality, how to walk towards transformation and change because it's inevitable. So you might as well lean into it in a way that is beneficial for you. And that's just three of the seven different paths that we talk about and that I walk you through, and that there's activities for and fun exercises and deep exercises and fun exercises. And there's even meditations, um, podcasts and YouTube videos to assist with each of those different sections in that activity book. All of this is for the purposes of remembering who we are as Black women, remembering our position, our power, our beauty, our infinite capacity to love, but only when we remember how to love ourselves first. Then it just goes to the overflow. Everyone else is able to feast off of the overflow. But if we're working from depletion, if we're working from lack, if we're working from this concept of people pleasing everyone else, it's not sustainable for ourselves, and it doesn't give what the community and our people and our family truly need. But first we got to take care of ourselves and understand that when you remember who you are, then you can stand in a place and say and remember and know who you are. And everyone, whether it's colonizers, organizations, those we trying to work with and negotiate with, come to us with another, a different, a higher level of respect, because we have the higher level of respect and regard for who we are and our ancestral mothers that came before us. That's the mission. That's the medicine. And in doing so, you can train others to challenge these unfair systems. Now, I know we tired. We told everybody. We showed up at the polls and did what we have to do, and now we got fascism and chaos running amok. Now is the time to be working more on that internal, because there will be a time when we got to step forward again. But we get to choose how we step forward. We get to choose how we do this. And as the last wisdom in medicine talked about, it's grassroots. It's right where you are. It's going to start here and then it's going to go there and there. And by there and there, I'm talking about it's going to start internally with your own heart, your own wellness, your own well being. Go to your family, go to your community, and start going from there in a grassroots fashion. That's the medicine. That's the wisdom. Respect is not granted, it's organized, and organize your dignity into policy and protect our communities and help others and train others on how to protect themselves and their communities by using facts, fire, and community backing. Again, like only Black women know how to do. And the last piece of wisdom I'll leave you with from Mama Alamutu, is that Black women have always been the front line, not the footnote. Black women have always been the front line, not the footnote. Even though his story will let us, will put us in the back, will make it seem like we're not relevant, will make it seem like our contributions were not as powerful as they were, but they are, and they always have been. Mama Alimutu led protests before independence was popular, and she preserved culture and defied the empire, the colonizers, while historians still to this day ignore her name. But we're not doing that today. Mama Ialoja Alimutu Pelewura, we give thanks to you. We give thanks for your works, and we give thanks for your courage. We give thanks for your voice. The medicine and how we can apply her wisdom to our lives, that wisdom that Black women have always been on the front line and not the footnote, is that we can remember that we were never behind, we were always holding it down. Reclaim and teach these erased stories. That's why I'm saying share this video, share this series. Understand who and what you are as a Black woman. It's not just what you see in the normal social media. It's not just what you see, and damn sure not what you see in media. Barely what you read in history books. And if they are successful, if those people are successful in removing the books, removing the culture, removing the content, you damn sure not going to learn it anywhere. So places like this and amongst each other, the way it had been historically, is how we're going to remember and how we're going to keep the history, the her story alive. Reclaim and teach these stories and make them foundational and not forgotten. Create rituals and archives like this. Do more, go beyond. I'm sharing with you my perspective. Dig into her life, dig into other Black women's lives all over the globe who have done these incredible things. Search out the information so that we can keep their names alive and bring that energy forth so that we can use that as wisdom and medicine in our lives today and make them foundational. Use your platform to name the names and to share the information that history books have forgotten, have erased, and continue to erase even further. They erasing stuff that wasn't even that long ago. They erasing stuff that y'all's mamas and daddies remember. The people alive today remember it, and they trying to take that out the history books. It's up to us to keep it alive and to remember it and create an archive. I do not want to be the only one. I know I'm not the only one, but I want more of us doing this. And honestly, I want some Black men doing the same thing for Black men as well. I'm focusing on Black women in the ancestral activation. I looked at all of us because it was about Black History Month and ancestors as a whole. But where I'm going deep and continuing to go is with Black women because that's what needs to get highlighted from my perspective, at least for Black women. And so, again, we were never behind. We were always holding it down. Use your platform, use your critical thinking, use your research skills to understand and to look and find more Black women, more dope Black women whose names to honor. Like today, we are honoring and we have honored Ialoja Alimutu Pelewura. We thank you. We thank you. We thank you. We thank you for your contributions. We thank you for your insights. We thank you for your work. We thank you for your courage and your bravery because it was not easy to do what you did. But you laid a foundation and left this wisdom that now we need more than ever. And we thank you, Mama. We thank you, Ia Loja. I don't know about y'all, but I always need this at the end. Take a deep breath. Go touch some grass. Go read some books. Go hug up on your family. your friends, your community. Go get my book. Remember who the fuck you are. Activity book. Get some colored pencils so you can have a little fun. Do uh, some energy system, some nervous system calming activities. You can even get my first book, From Fat, Black, and Unlovable to Beautiful, Powerful Love. That's more of a memoir. It has some exercises in there too, but that's more of a memoir talking a little bit about my story and my ancestral mother. But the point is, dive into the beauty, the lushness, the incredible resilience, the brilliance of being a Black woman. Until next time, y'all know what to do. Take exquisite care of you. Peace.